So they don't really make any ladder racks for a Tacoma that I like, at least. The ones that they do seem to kind of take up way more space than they should, or they are a universal rack, which means you're screwing it to the bed. And considering a Tacoma bed is a composite and they don't make them like normal truck beds, it's kind of hard to bolt through the bed rails. So I picked this ladder rack up for $100 used, and we're going to modify it to fit. And I think the end result turns out pretty nice. So my original idea for this ladder rack was to keep my tonneau cover with the rack, and that ended up being more difficult than I originally thought. I also wanted to just have the post come down and then immediately mount up to the side bed tracks. And then I realized that the tracks don't run the full length of the bed, so I would have to use this flat stock in order to run the full length of the bed rails in order to drop down and fasten and securely attach all 4 posts to the bed track. I didn't want to have to drill any holes in the bed or do fancy modification of my bed in order to get this attached, so I thought the bed tracks were a great option in order to securely fasten this without any heavy modification. I only wanted the flat bar to stick out past the bed rails where the posts were going to attach. So here I've been marking out the locations of where those posts are going to sit, and then marking a line of how far in I'm going to have to cut to remove the material from the flat bar. I could have welded pieces on to the end where the posts were going to attach, but I figured leaving this all one piece was going to be stronger and give us a better result in the end. It still might have been the better option to cut and weld in the end, just because of the amount of warpage we got cutting this with a torch. But it's a good learning experience, and we still, I think, got the result that we wanted. Most of these racks sit really high up above the cab. I wanted this to be as sleek and as close to the cab as I could get. Time will only tell if once we get a load up here, if it's going to deflect the top of the rack and hit the cab. If it does, at that point we're going to have to make some modifications and either brace it with another tube or raise it up. I'm hoping we don't have to raise it up because I really like the look of having it kind of follow the lines of the body. I've used a torch before to heat up things and bend them, or to heat treat steel, but I've never used one to cut before, so I had to bring in one of my friends to educate me on how to use this torch in order to cut 1/8" material. So here he's showing me how to cut this piece of flat stock that I've marked out, and then I end up finishing it off. Being my first time, I definitely didn't cut this as straight or as clean as I wanted. So just cleaning up the edges here with a grinder, trying to straighten it out the best I can, and it's still not perfect. But it's gonna work, and I don't think anybody's really going to notice. So once we got our plates cut and up in place on the bed, we can finally cut our tubes that are going to go up to the top of the rack here that we have sitting up on the lift. Now that we've got the tubes cut and in place, time to tack everything together. off camera before I ever started recording and got the rack up in the air on the lift. I had shortened it 13.5 inches in order to get it to fit the short bed on the Tacoma. Those pieces that I cut out, I re-welded back together and ground them smooth so that we can put another cross member up on the front of this rack. From the back to the middle of the rack, there was one cross member in the middle, and then from the middle to the front, which was the exact same distance as the back to the middle, there was nothing. So I felt that we needed an additional one, especially if we ever hauled a sheet of plywood. This would allow it to not have a 4-foot overhang without support underneath it. And yes, I could have went and bought a new piece of tube to weld in here and not have to butt weld 3 pieces of tube together, but we were trying to do this as cheap as possible, and when I only paid $100 for the rack and $40 for the pieces of steel that I purchased, I didn't feel like paying more money for another tube when I have tube that I could reuse. And here's the rack up on the truck. Notice how close it is to the cab up there. That's what I was kind of going for, trying to keep it within the body lines of the vehicle. Time will tell if it's actually going to work out that way, as I haven't put a load up there yet. But I think it looks really good. It almost looks like it could go overlanding with this thing. Maybe put some lights up there and a tent. You know, it'd be an overlanding rack. Not that I intend on using it as that. But I think it's going to be a cool multi-purpose rack in the end. Might even be able to make a tent if we put some canvas up over on the sides and stuff. But we'll see. I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching.